Top of the show, we got some new polling today, interesting polling showing us the state of the race now that Joe Biden, the president, has decided not to run for re-election. I'll put up the Reuters poll first. This is a Reuters Ipsos poll taken in the 2 days after President Biden dropped out of the race. You can see Kamala Harris ahead of Donald Trump by 2 points. If you add RFK in, she's ahead of Donald Trump by 4 points, 42% to 38%. The head-to-head matchup is within the margin of error, so the number you're seeing there is within the margin of error. But when you add in RFK, that 4-point margin is outside of the margin of error. It also should be shown alongside of a morning consult poll we also got today that shows Donald Trump in the lead, 47 to 45. Again, within the margin of error. Joining us now, Cook Political Report's senior editor and elections analyst, David Wasserman, a man who knows the numbers, deals in probabilities like these. So, again, these are just very quick polls. The race is going to change going forward, but does this say anything to you about where we might be headed?
Look, Katie, it's going to take at least a week before we get a robust sample of national polls that tells us what's changed. That said, I do expect a bit of a honeymoon period for Kamala Harris, and after a while, it's going to come back down to earth. I think it's similar to the honeymoon she enjoyed when she was picked by Biden 4 years ago. The question is whether she can get out ahead of Republicans' attack on her. That when she ran in 2020, she was the left of Joe Biden on several issues regarding not only.
Yeah, we're enough of this spin stuff. First, look, Shakespeare had it wrong. It was first we kill all the pollsters, except Mark Mitchell and Richard Bears. So that was a Reuters poll. We got Mark Mitchell coming on from Rasmussen. Mark, tell me why that poll was what I think it was, which is pure propaganda for the left.
Well, I personally can't look at that and directly call them liars. Everybody has a bad poll every now and again and gets a little mud on their face.
Oh, you call that a bad poll? You call that a bad poll?
I think so. There's a bunch of reasons why I think that data doesn't make any sense to me. But if you're one of the people that doesn't like following individual pollsters and you like the aggregates, go look at the Trump-Harris aggregate on Real Clear Polling, and there's only one blue circle right now, and it's them. So they're sticking their necks out to put Harris up. Yeah. But like the three biggest things that come to my mind is that if you look at the sample on Real Clear Politics, it's 1,000 registered voters, and most of the industry is polling registered voters right now. Rasmussen always polls likely voters because we think it's a better reflection of what happens in November. And guess what? The entire industry is going to shift to likely voters too, right? So I think all of these.
Let's drill down a little bit on that so the viewers understand it. Registered voters is everybody who's registered to vote. Likely voters can be defined in a number of ways. It can be voted in the last 2 out of 4 elections, 3 out of 4 every election. How do you define that? And with a presidential election, we know that you have to be a little looser with that definition because you get a higher turnout. Can you give us a little technical? War Room likes technical stuff.
Yeah, I think likely voter is a better model, and you see it do sometimes swing around because it follows people's enthusiasm. But most people polling registered voters will just go buy a file of registered voters and reach out and contact those people and ask them questions. What we do is we randomly reach out to people and then say, well, how likely is it that you're going to vote in the upcoming election? And anybody who says, they're likely to vote, we keep, but anybody else we throw out. So those people cost us money because we contact them, spend money, and then throw them out. But we think that is a better picture of the electorate. And what happens is, I think it makes our numbers a little bit more sensitive to major swings in news events, because all of a sudden people will say, oh, I'm not voting anymore. And so they won't get picked up on our likely voter screen, and it'll drastically change. And that brings me to the number 2 reason why I think that that poll's off. Is because if you look at that article, they show that they had Trump winning slightly over Biden just a week ago, and now they have Trump down on Kamala. And I can tell you, and I'll talk about some of our numbers here. What I saw was a massive post-RNC bounce for Donald Trump. I can't think of any reason other than maybe it's a registered voter poll why I didn't see the same thing in their numbers, because that was a huge event that really set the tone of the Republican electorate. So if you haven't been, I mean, you might not have been keeping track.
Over what time frame did they do the poll? What do we know when they went out with the poll?
Theirs was just yesterday and today.
One day, 2 day poll. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Good a time as any to take it, but where's that bounce? So we had post-debate major mega swing state and national poll, 2,500 likely voters nationally, and we had Trump +3 post-debate, which is the lowest lead we've had for him since November, but it's all due to rallying Democrats because of Joe Biden's horrible debate performance that actually made them circle the wagon. But then, because of that RNC, because of the assassination attempt, new numbers out today, we now have Donald Trump back up to 8 points, which is among one of his higher readings. We got him taking 50% of the vote now, which is the highest he's had for a long time. Biden only taking 42, and Trump winning by 21 points among independents now, which is a horrifying and crushing lead. And again, like we all know, Biden dropped out. But that brings me to my third point about their poll. I've polled about Kamala Harris a lot of times. I've polled a lot about Biden, and never once in any one of our polls has Kamala Harris ever outperformed Joe Biden. It just doesn't happen. If I do a Kamala Harris-Trump matchup, she does a point or two worse than Biden. If I test their favorability, she's 41 instead of 43. Like, America does not like her more than Joe Biden, and I think they were kind of forced.
Help me drill down a little bit on it. I want to ask you some short, specific questions, if you'll humor me. What's Kamala's favorable, unfavorable rating?
I think the last time we ran it was like 41%. I forget how many. It's very similar to Biden, but Biden does a little bit better.
Is your unfavorable higher than her favorable?
Oh, yeah. Oh, without a doubt. We have very few people who are not sure about what they think about Kamala Harris. So that puts her significantly underwater with, mid-50s unfavorable rating and underwater in the teens. Again, on any given day.
So a mid-50s unfavorable rating means that some people are holding their nose and voting for her if a poll like the Reuters poll is true. I mean, a lot of people holding their nose.
Well, we get a lot of flack for this, Peter, because we routinely show Joe Biden with a higher job approval rating than anybody else in the industry. We've had him as high as 45% after that debate, with 55% unfavorable, so 10 points underwater. But here's the thing.
What's Donald Trump's unfavorables?
Donald Trump right now is the most favorably viewed politician every time we ask in every poll than any other major political character that we poll on.
Is his favorables higher than his unfavorable? Is his favorables higher than his unfavorables?
He's almost always a majority favorable, 51, 52. His very favorable's slightly higher than Biden, but this is a very divided nation. The fact that anybody gets above a majority is incredible, and he does. And of course, he does also routinely have a higher, very unfavorable, but then he has fewer somewhats. So he's viewed more favorably than literally anybody.
Let me ask again. Let me give me I'll ask you quick ones and give you back the mic. But I have said that the campaign now, with all this chaos, boils down to, on their side, orange man bad, abortion, abortion, abortion. Whereas on our side, what we need to do is get away from personalities and focus on policy, because every policy we trump them on, pun intended.
Well, I can absolutely tell you, based on all of our issue polling, that Republicans have an edge on almost every issue that matters to voters, on the economy, on inflation. We're talking about a lead over Republicans over Democrats in the teens on the issue of inflation and the economy, which voters also tell us is their most important issue. But I also have to say, I'm not sure if that's, people know Trump, people trust him, the people that support him, and people on the left, I think, are supporting Biden because, he's just part of their party. I don't know if this is going to necessarily be a referendum on the issues. The thing to me that affected the race, the two biggest things in the last month, are that debate rallied Democrats, and then the RNC gave Trump a really big bounce, especially in independents. And I didn't see a lot of deep policy talk. I think it was the optimism and the unity and just everybody coming together, post his assassination attempt. So if they could somehow put that lightning in a bottle, but 27% of the electorate says economy is the biggest issue, followed by border security at 20%. Right there, you add those up, that's 47% of people, and Republicans, lead really big on that. And then you add in things that could also be construed as favoring Trump, violent crime. That gets you up to 55%. You add in government corruption, drain the swamp. That gets you up to 63%. What's another one that Republicans have an advantage on? I can tell you abortion is the third most important issue. It's only 10%. Only 13% of women care most about abortion, only 11% of 18 39-year-olds, only 18% of Democrats. It's not even the Democrats' number one issue anymore. It's the economy. Now, I will say, let me
ask you a question, Mark. Is any of this indoctrination of the kids in the schools, or the transgender destruction of women's sports, the genital mutilization of young boys, is any of that show up in your polling in any kind of woke ways? Is there a question framed directly or indirectly about the wokeness, DEI, and all of that stuff? Because to me, that's like independents and Republicans, and a lot of mainstream Democrats are offended by that. Is that showing up? Do you poll for that?
So that's a really tough one to put in a stack ranked issue set, but it's also a very easy one to poll about, many, many different ways. And we have a huge library of anti-woke polling, things like DEI, making companies worse, not better, things like voters overwhelmingly supporting bans on, hormone replacement therapy and gender assignment. People, even on abortion, I think the number of people who actually support 6 to 9 month abortions, only 12%. It's only in the 20s for Biden supporters. So they don't believe in late term abortion, but they just think that the other things are more important. So the country,
what about gender the weapon? Stuff. Yeah, go ahead. Finish that thought.
Oh, I'm just saying, on the woke gender stuff, they're right leaning, but some of them is just not the most important thing.
And what about the weaponization of government in terms of putting people like me in prison or trying to put Donald Trump in prison? Does that more with the independents, or does that appear at all? I mean, it seems like every time they crack down on Donald Trump, his numbers go up. So where does that reflected in your polls? I mean, does the weaponization of the justice system a salient issue in this campaign?
100%. I would say more of an issue over the last, maybe the 12 months starting in March 2023, when coming after Trump with an indictment really did get his campaign right back on track. He was polling kind of poorly in January and February of 2023, and then all of a sudden it turned right on around. And then there was this period, 2022, 2023, where we'd ask people about what they think about the FBI, the Department of Justice. We did it in a bunch of different ways, but basically we saw that number keep ratcheting up. We saw 53% of Americans thought the FBI was Joe Biden's personal Gestapo. Then we had 60% of people thinking the media is the enemy of the people. Then we had 64% who said that they thought January 6th was a Fedsurrection. Then we had 66, I think, percent of people agreeing that the political weaponization of the justice against Donald Trump was banana republic stuff. So I mean, the number kept getting higher and higher, and it was always. So
does that not fit anywhere in your stack polling thing, or is it a function of you not polling that?
Yeah, we could probably test weaponization of government. We haven't put it in there. I think one of the things you'll see though is that I think a lot of people, Democrats and liberals, think that Trump's going to weaponize the government as well. So the fear, the sensitivity is high there. And I think the biggest theme is just the lack of trust. Again,
well, the issue there is retribution versus accountability. And the idea of the Democrats running amok and not holding them accountable, it means they're just going to do it again anytime they have power. Whereas if you go in there and all you focus on is retribution and to the exclusion of dealing with the economy and the border and everything, that's a different set of facts. So clearly their pollsters are trying to push that. And what we're saying is, no. They've weaponized the government. That's dangerous. They can come for you. They can come for me. They can come for you. And they need to be held accountable. I mean, I think that's a hard polling task for you, but I think you'd be missing something if you don't figure that one out.
No, I think you gave me a good word. I don't think retribution is a good word to use. I think Trump should stay away from that. I think accountability is that I'll put a question in the field Thursday, get results back next week.
And the question is, if the Democrats are not held accountable for weaponizing the justice system, will they keep doing it or something like that? That's the problem. It's it's not a one-off. They're trying to say, well, it's Trump's going to get in there and retribution for what we did, and kumbaya now that if they win. But no. If they get back, look, they put me in prison. They put Bannon's in prison right now. They're trying to put Trump in prison for 700 years. And by the way, if Kamala Harris wins, Trump's going to prison. Okay? Yeah, so in a lot of ways, there's a poll question for you there. It's in many ways, this is a referendum on whether Trump should go to prison. Yeah, American people are going to vote overwhelmingly against that out of fairness. So go ahead.
I agree with that. I mean, there were people that were happy that Trump was going through the legal process. Some people still do trust justice. They figured that if he didn't do anything wrong, that potentially he would be found not guilty. But there were so many of these questions, a lot of them conflicted. On the flip side, a majority of people said, no, there's no way that Trump's getting a fair trial in New York. I think
Atlanta.
Yeah, right.
Or in Washington, D.C. I mean, I had a jury pool in Washington, D.C. You can't make this up. Do you remember what the vote was for Biden in Washington, D.C.?
Oh, was it 99%?
95, 95%. So you're drawing a jury pool. It's going to judge me, 95% of whom voted for Joe Biden, and the 5% that might show up in the courtroom, the prosecution has jury cards to get him out of there. So, I mean, there's another question. Can Trump get a fair trial in Manhattan, D.C., or Atlanta, blue states?
I think these are really important issues. I just think this issue is important. Well, from a polling perspective, I have numbers that to me show that Kamala Harris polls worse than Biden. I'm not going to give you exact numbers because it's one night out of 3 nights, but we went back into the field yesterday testing Kamala versus Trump, and she does significantly worse than Biden did in this week's poll, where, again, we had Trump up +8 over Biden.